All right. Hello, Fortina's brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Ministry Revealed. It is July 1st, 2026. Oh, can we be in the month? Let it be so, Lord. We are watching, praying, diligently seeking, and searching forever and until. And today in Canada, for my fellow brothers and sisters from Canada, it is Canada Day. So happy Canada Day to everybody. And with that being said, we're gonna have some more fun here today. We're gonna seek and search, and we're gonna show connections that we've understood, and I'm doing it to wrap it all up, to bring in another prophetic connection from the is. You see, we've been able to show this a lot, haven't we? You see, prophecy doesn't, the real revelation, the truth and the understanding and the revelation of prophecy, as has come to be revealed here, that the truth is the understanding of 14 years, a small portion above, and the 14 years followed by the final Jubilee. That it's Luke, then Mark, then Matthew. That is the foundation. That's the core of the beginning of the understanding of prophecy. And I'm telling you what, when you get it, it is so it's crazy what opens, right? Like, just consider a couple of videos back, it's all incredibly connected. You know, how we tied in more things from one event in the prophetic and showed all its connections and what wrapped around it. We can do this from the beginning of Genesis to the end of Revelation. You see, prophecy isn't just about bringing clarity and understanding to the is to come, although that's the core part. It brings clarity to the was, which, by the way, is from creation to Christ, and the is, which is from Christ until the moment of the pre-trib. And of course, the is to come is from the pre-trib until the very end. So you have the was, the is, and the is to come. And we all know from Ecclesiastes 1:9, what was shall be. What is shall be, and there's nothing new under the sun. Which means, are all these things going to repeat in the exact same thing? The same person's going to show up in the same buildings and all? No, it's all in typology. You must understand typology. And if you understand the revelation of the 14 years and who the Gospels are speaking to, all of these things will come to be open to you. You see, because what was shall be in the is to come. What is shall be in the is to come. Which means you can find, when you understand prophecy and then you go back into the was from creation until Christ, you can find incredible amounts of revelation in typologies to confirm and bring more clarity to the is to come. And then you can go to things from the is from Christ until the pre-trib happens, and you can associate things from within that have happened to bring clarity and to confirm these things in the is to come. We've been doing this and showing this for years now. We're coming up close on 9 years in September. So it's this incredible revelation that has done this for us. The prophecy of what of the is to come is what has helped bring greater clarity to the was and to the is. And we're going to see that here again today in an event connected to the is, which was just from, between the time of Christ until the moment of the pre-trib. There's an event within this time that we're also now going to be able to show the connection to. And the way we can confirm or understand if we have understand its timing and the truth of it is, of course, you guessed it, seeing what we can understand in prophecy. Where do we see the same prophetic picture of this event happening in prophecy? And if we know where this event is, if we have proven it and we can go to the details of it, well, then guess what? We can get clarity as to the timing of this event. And when we do, you're going to see that it proves that the Hebrews calendar, now what I mean, I don't mean the Hebrew calendar in the day counts and where we are, okay? We're following that. But when you go to the year count of the Hebrew calendar, they're in the year 5786, I think, and then this fall they'll go to 5787, if I remember correctly. Now, if you look at that, you would have to say, well, that's not close to 6,000 years. How could the end of days be so near at hand if their calendar is not even close to 14 years or so away from the 6,000 years? Why is it still so far back? right? Over 200 and some years. Well, that's because the way they counted their calendar. There's missing years. And in so doing, they've also misunderstood, and I'm going to show this to you in their own words, that they've misunderstood how or where to account for their Sabbath years in the cycles of sevens. Because you have to understand, they believe, well, they don't necessarily, they might try to tell you that they believe, but they don't really believe because of how they track it, but they accept where they track it from. They accept it because that's what's been going on now for several hundred years. So they accept that that's where it is. But we have greater clarity because we have the New Testament, which they do not. And from the New Testament, we can prove it. As we've proven it going backwards, as we've proven it going to the end of days, we're going to prove it with additional revelation in the time frame of Christ, or actually a few decades after Christ. And we're going to see if we can prove that, because in proving that by using prophecy, we can find out if we're close. We can find out if we're really in a time frame. You see, because we have a key that they don't. We have Luke chapter 3 and Luke chapter 4. That's right. Luke chapter 3 and Luke chapter 4 is so incredibly foundational to understanding the seasons and times that we're living in. So incredibly foundational. Because you know what the Jews do? They do the same thing most of the church does. They go all the way back and try to understand and literally believe they understand to the year of when, in fact, they even believe to the day they know when Adam was created. Well, I don't believe that for a second. You know how many variations there are of a time frame, and to be able to count it all the way back? There's a huge discrepancy in the number of years. In fact, there's so much so of a discrepancy that their calendar is only at 5786. You see? And if we have to be close to 6,000 and we're more than 200 years away from it, you think maybe there's a mistake? You see, well, the church has done the same thing. Most people in prophecy try to go all the way back to the time of creation to figure out how close we are to the end. When we have a key that has unlocked this in Luke chapter 3 and Luke chapter 4. That period of time gives us less than a handful of years, literally, really a 3-year time frame to what all this will equal. But you also need to understand how to count the Jubilee, right? You guys have understood that the Jubilee year is the first year of the next set of 7. It's not a standalone year. There's no such thing as a standalone year. It is the first year of the next set of 7, okay? And we've broken this down. And what it tells us is that we're in it right now. Is there a possibility, as we said in the last teaching, that maybe there's one more year and it pushes everything forward one more year? If it did, it would be the absolute maximum based on the timing of Christ, based on his birth, based on all of these things that we've been breaking down over the past several years and getting deeper in detail on, even over more recent years, and especially over the last 2 to 3 years. Okay? So knowing this, what you're going to see today is going to be more evidence built right into it. Okay? It's absolutely awesome, the clarity that it brings. So let's delve into this and see some of these examples. But of course, before we do, you know where I'm going, because there's generally always somebody new coming to the ministry. So what we always recommend is you can go to ministryrevealed.com by clicking right here and go into the menu, click on intro, or you go to the playlist right here if you're already on YouTube and come to this one right here, the intro to the end times revelation. When you click on that, you're going to come to this. There's 15 teachings in here. Don't worry, you don't have to go into all 15 teachings right away. We just recommend the first 3. The first 4. The first 3 are short, and the fourth one is a long one, but I promise you these 4 will be worth your time. If you have ever desired to understand prophecy, the Spirit has led you to the right spot, because you're going to see the understanding and the revelation of prophecy like never ever before understood, and it brings so much clarity. Just like I was saying in the opener, it's not just clarity to prophecy, but the revelation of prophecy proves greater understanding from creation even into the time of Christ. Okay, so the first one here is this one right here. It's a 22-minute intro to what you're going to begin to understand in the next three. The second one is just a 30-minute Bible study to show you that the differences, to begin to show you that the differences of who the Gospels are speaking to. So the synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and the reason they have differences in their stories. Sometimes vast differences. Sometimes the story is in Matthew and in Luke, but not in Mark. And in both cases, they're different. Every single one of these things, we've been told, are either contradictions or just perspective. We prove to you right here, this is the beginning of it for you. We prove to you that every single one of those things is prophecy. Every single difference within the synoptic gospels is 100% all about prophecy. You see, it's all, you could see it like we talked about. It's these typologies in the was and in the is that reveal the is to come. Once you get the revelation of the is to come, it brings greater clarity to the gospels. It brings greater clarity to creation. It's absolutely awesome. Okay, so this is what you're going to see. And then you're going to find out within this is that the last is first and the first is last. So the first gospel is Matthew, then Mark, and then Luke. But in the end, it's going to be Luke and then Mark and then Matthew. Spirit and then light and then flesh. It's absolutely incredible once you get it. This is just a 30-minute Bible study to begin to show you basic snowflake, like the tip of the iceberg, to begin to help you understand that what these differences are saying is all about prophecy. From there, you're going to begin to realize that if Matthew's gospel in his discourse was all about the 7 years of tribulation, and now there's Mark and then there's Luke, well, you're going to realize that the end of days isn't any longer, as you thought, 7 years, but that it's 14 years. Mark's is the other 7, and Luke's, even though it is a 7, it only represents a portion of time called above. So you have the above that begins with the pre-trib. It's a number of days, and then you got 7 years of seals and 7 years of trumpets. When you begin to understand the differences in the Gospels and the Synoptic Gospels, you'll begin to truly understand the revelation of the end time years. And when you do, everything with these two parts begins to open up. Questions will be answered. You'll even end up getting questions to answers you didn't even know were questions. Answers to questions that you didn't even know were answers. You see? It's vice versa. It doesn't matter how you say it. You didn't even know these things were to be asked. I didn't. Even when the revelations came, I didn't even know they were questions until bang, it shows up. It's incredible. Well, then you get to the fourth one, and it's all because of Matthew. So a lot of people say, how come this wasn't understood generations ago, right? And the answer is, number one, it's because it's all in God's timing. But number two is because we have all foundationally been taught from the Gospel of Matthew. And when everything is foundationally taught from the Gospel of Matthew, everybody just goes to Matthew and takes a little bit from Mark and even less from Luke to try to fill in gaps of things that took place in the is to try to understand the whole story of Matthew. When in reality, they're different stories, and they're different portions of those stories are telling us a different portion of time to a different group of people. And because we've all seen through the eyes of Matthew, we've all been taught generation after generation through the eyes of Matthew, everything everybody sees is 7 years of tribulation, 7,000 years of creation until the end of the millennial reign, and everybody going pre-trib. When in reality, the end of days is an above, in 14 years, 7 of seals, 7 of trumpets, with pre-trib, mid-trib, and post-trib all being true. So with that, go watch those. Go watch those first 4 if you're new. And from there, let's get started. In fact, I'm even going to start in a place that I just mentioned. Everybody here in this ministry knows this because we've been tracking this. When this first came to be revealed to me, it was back in right around, I think it was sometime in October of 2017. And this revelation, all of this started to come in starting September 8th of 2017. That's when all of the revelation started. There was a question in my mind that when reading Revelation 12 and Isaiah 66:7 to Luke 21, bam, I had this question, and I just followed it, and I've been following that, and the revelation it's been leading in ever since. And in October of 2017, this was the second part. Once the gospel started to be revealed in the first month, it was the revelation of the years that came next. You see, because in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, it's in Christ above 14 years. You have the was caught up, a type of rapture going to the third heaven. Then you have another man, not quite in Christ, but kind of, sort of, was caught up. This is the was caught up mid-trib great multitude that goes to paradise. And then you see Paul again. Again, remember, it's prophetic typologies laced into this. And now he says, behold, the third time I am ready to come to you. So he's not going to bring them burden and so forth. You see, the first one was a taking, the second one was a taking, and the third one is a coming. You see, that's pre-trib, mid-trib, and the return to the Lord, feet down on the Mount of Olives. Now, what's so fascinating about this is when you understand this above in 14 years, this was the beginning. This piece of scripture was the beginning of the revelation of 14 years and a portion called above. You see, this portion that's called above, which is believed to be 50 days, this portion called above is the final period of time before, is the final piece of the previous 7, which means if the end of days was going to be 21 years, this above wouldn't have been above. It would have just said 21 years ago. You see, this above is the final days of the 7 that came before the 14. You see, because it's 7 times 7 is 49, and then the Jubilee. So the 14 years, the 7 years of seals and the 7 years of trumpets are the last 2 sets of 7 in the Jubilee, 7 times 7, you see, and then the final Jubilee, which means this above was a 7, but the portion that matters in the end of days is only a period of time called above. And that period of time above is believed to be 50 days. And it starts with the pre-trib. Okay? It begins with the pre-trib and events that are found in Luke's discourse before 7 years of seals and 7 years of trumpets. Now, why am I going into this? Because remember what we're talking about. It's prophecy. The revelation of the end of days is what brought clarity to creation, to the story of Noah, to Moses' story with Aaron, to Joshua, it goes on and on, to the Solomon's temple. On and on and on. People have read these things for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, generation after generation, and there was no connection in its prophetic picture. There was no connection in it with the end of days. We've proven that, in fact, all of these things are prophetically connected. And in this one, as we began to understand the revelation of the above in 14 years, what came to be understood? You see, as we understood the prophecy of the above in 14 years, the is to come of the above in 14 years, what came next? Well, 2 Peter 3:8 revealed itself. Right? 2 Peter 3:8 says, but beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years. And that means what? A separation of something in addition to. So it's not just repeating it backwards for the sake of repeating it backwards, when it then says 1,000 years is as one day. It's telling us this is one thing, and this is another thing. They're added together. They're not the same thing. They're added together, one after the other. 1 plus 1 equals 2. You see, there are 2 things being added together, one after the other. And with the revelation of the 14 years and coming to read this, suddenly, boom, Genesis 1 kicked in, right? Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, right until the end of days. And what did we get? We came to understand that day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, and the 7th day rest was what? Each day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, which means each of those days were to the Lord a day. But if we were there experiencing it in the dimension of time that we're in, they would have each been as 1,000 years. And then what happened? Then you get to Genesis chapter 2, after the seventh day. Now you get to Genesis chapter 2, and Adam is formed. And from the time of Adam, we're now living in thousands of years. Hello? You see? We're now living in the dimension of time of the flesh, and we're living in the thousands of years. And what does it say? It reverses it now. So isn't that interesting? That Genesis chapter 1, you had the days of creation, and it starts with days. And then in Genesis 2, it starts the thousands. And what's the second one? The thousands. You see, each of the thousands that we're living in right now, each of them is as one day. But, each of the thousands that we're living in now, which will be 6,000, and then the 7,000th, which is the millennial reign, each of those to the Lord God is as one day. So the revelation of prophecy that started with the above in the 14 years revealed to us that creation would have been like 7,000 in the days to us, plus the 7,000 that we're living in now. That would be 7,000 and 7,000. 7 years of seals, 7 years of trumpets. We're seeing a prophetic picture in the story of creation. You see, and to the Lord God, it would have been 7 days and 7 days. It's a prophetic picture of all of creation. That's why if you go to the list of the intro series, and you go after you begin to understand this, you can go to the 15th teaching, and it's called "It's All a Fractal," and we go into depth on this. It is mind blowing. You see, so what we just discovered was that the 14 years is like the 7 days of creation and the 7,000 since Adam, or the 7,000 as days and the 7,000 we're in as the 7 days to the Father and 7 days to the Father. In the end of days, it's 7 years of seals and 7 years of trumpets. But there's also this portion called above. And in this portion called above, well, lo and behold, what do we get in Genesis 1? Before the creation of light, which is Christ, when God made the sun light, right? Made Jesus light, and he made the light in the darkness, and that was day one. It just so happens that there's scholars that have this thing that they call gap theory. That is Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 and 2 is gap theory. That there was another creation that came first. Well, lo and behold, wouldn't you know it? It's the Spirit of God. It was the creation of spirit before the creation of light, before chapter 2, the 7,000 in the creation of flesh. So what do we get in this little 2-verse summary? What's here? We end up with this portion called above. This little piece called above. And it's those who are in Christ. You see, that's the prophetic picture. The above portion is the gap theory of creation, Genesis 1, verse 1 and 2. And what was it all about? The Spirit of God. It was all about the portion of the Spirit when Christ made all the Spirit and all that realm. You see, and what would that have been? That would have been another 7,000 if we were there. It would have been like a 7-day creation to the Lord, but he was so excited to create it. It's just this short portion in the last piece of it called above. And if you go to Romans 8:1, what does it say? Those who are in Christ, Spirit filled. Do you understand how wild of a revelation that was? We can show through the revelation of prophecy, we can show what the timing and the understanding of its breakdown was in the creations, from the Spirit to the light to the flesh. The above, the 7 days as 7 years of seals, and the 7,000 years as the 7 years of trumpets. It's wild. You see, how did this come about? How did we get this revelation of creation? Not until we understood the revelation of prophecy. You see, for all those that still can't grasp that the end of days is actually 14 years in a short portion called above, they're really not studying it. They're not paying close attention. Because just in this one revelation, by going to 2 Corinthians 12, going to 2 Peter 3:8, and going to Genesis 1 and 2, you could literally, that could be all you need to see the story of creation and its picture of the end of days. This isn't wrong. This is the revelation, and it's the prophecy of it that revealed the clarity of the different creations. You see how powerful that is? These are the types of things. This is what I was saying, like when we go back to a couple teachings ago, and how we showed how it's all incredibly connected from just by going into one piece of prophecy and showing all of these things wrapped around it and connected to it. Here we are showing the revelation that started almost 9 years ago in the second month of since the revelation started, and the 14 years began to be revealed. And years later, we end up, years later, which was a few years ago, 3-4 years ago now, bang, we get the revelation of the stories of creation. And it's an exact picture. And when I say an exact picture, like an exact quote unquote typology of what creation was to the understanding of the end of days. It's so absolutely incredible. Still blows my mind. Well, what about this one? What about in Genesis, right? This one's a big one. This one started, we had some understanding of it, but it wasn't until we heard another teacher, Nelson Walters, and he had made this point about the count of Noah's years. You see, we already knew that the revelation of the end of days was 14 years, but not that it played out a full 14. It played out as 13, then the return of the Lord in that final year where he would bring destruction upon all the enemies of Israel, right? Upon all of his enemies. And at the end of that 14th year, because we know it's the 49th year, Jesus is going to declare the Jubilee. Well, we've understood this and we've showed it from many different places, right? Could you imagine these places? We've shown it from the story of Noah. We've shown it from Abraham with Ishmael and Isaac. We've shown it from the story in the big picture count with Jacob and his 2 wives and the cattle. It's incredible because the revelation of prophecy of the is to come is what brought clarity to these stories. And they're showing us within their stories, in the was and in the is, that what we've understood in the is to come is true. You see, these are the things that prove it. And so something like this was so incredible. Now, you have to understand, it's not about the month and the day that it happened. It doesn't mean it's going to happen on that day and that month in the future. It's giving us a count. It's telling us that in Noah's day, the 40 days began on the second month, 17th day of the month. And in Genesis chapter 8, it ended in the second month, 27th day of the month. Which means what? Which means the days of Noah lasted 1 year and 10 days. Okay? Now, before we had realized that, we already knew that Matthew chapter 24, at the coming of the Lord, which is when he returns feet down, at the start of the 14th year of tribulation, we already knew that it was going to be from the day and hour no one knows, and that it was what? Going to be as it was in the days of Noah. You see, we already understood that this represented the final 14th year, because this coming immediately after the tribulation of those days, when the Lord will be seen coming on the clouds of heaven. This is him coming at the 7th trumpet, feet down on the Mount of Olives, and to deal with everybody as it was in the days of Noah. This is going to be what? Well, how long were the days of Noah? 1 year and 10 days. And this is the final 14th year of tribulation, which means it's the 49th year in the 7 times 7, right? Because the 7 years of seals, 7 years of trumpets, they're the last 2 sets of 7 of the 7 times 7 before the final Jubilee. So what were we able to add to the mystery of this revelation? Well, that the days of Noah were 1 year and 10 days, and it represented the final 14th year, or which is the same as saying the 49th year. And what ends up happening? We found out through that brother's study that the days of Noah are 1 year and 10 days. Well, guess what? 1 year and 10 days is extremely relevant, and the reason it happens at the day and hour no one knows is because it's from the Feast of Trumpets. So the Lord returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives on the day and hour no one knows, which is the Feast of Trumpets, at the start of the 14th year, and he's here for 1 year and 10 days as the days of Noah. And what happens at the end of that 10th day? It's going to be the Jubilee. You see, so what ends up happening? Leviticus 25, 7 times 7 years with the Sabbaths is 49 years. And what happens? At that final 49th year, it only happens in the 49th year. Only out of all the 7 times 7s, it only happens in the 49th year that you sound the trumpet of the Jubilee 10 days later. You see, so what is this proving? What is this confirming? This is confirming that the day and hour no one knows in Matthew 24, which is the return of the Lord, feet down on the Mount of Olives, is unequivocally going to be at the day and hour no one knows, because from the day and hour no one knows, the days of Noah are 1 year and 10 days long, and 10 days after the day and hour no one knows, which is the Feast of Trumpets, it's the Day of Atonement. You see, do you see how awesome that is? Because what ended up happening? We were able to go to the was in the creation, in the early part of creation with man, in the story of the ark, and we were able to perfectly align the timing of the day and hour no one knows to the final year in the days of Noah, which is why it's not in Mark and it's not in Matthew's discourse. It's not in Luke or in Mark's discourse. It's only in Matthew's discourse, and the reason is because of its timing. So it was the revelation of prophecy and how the 14 years played out and the Lord returning at the start of the final 14th year, that when we went back to the story of Noah, we were able to discern precisely this timing of the Lord's return, feet down on the Mount of Olives. Now, when I say precisely, I mean we understand the time of year that it's going to happen. Okay? It's going to be at the Feast of Trumpets, which is a 2-day feast, right? The day and hour no one knows. It's either day 1 or day 2. That ends up being the Feast of Trumpets. That is the time it's going to happen. Now, it's only a matter of when all of this begins that we would be able to understand this. Okay? Well, if you were tracking from the last teaching and over the years, you saw we came full circle and why we're looking at later in July 22nd, 23rd, depending where you live in the world, and all of its implications and connections. It's so awesome. You see, because when you understand these things, then you track it back. And if we've really understood these things, if these things are understood in the prophetic, we should be able to find the matching connections, these revelations from the was and from the is, to confirm these things and to bring more clarity for us. And guess what? It happens hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. You know how awesome that is? It's so incredible. It's so incredible. Well, how about this one? How about this one, right? Oh man, this is so good. This one was brought to my attention by our sister Jana, and when this one came to be, it was another one of those, you're just like, man, God is good, right? You see, you might say, well, why repeating these stories? Why are we getting so many different connections? So we can piece the story, so we can see the picture, so we can draw closer, and it draws us in closer. It causes us to want to go in and dig and spend more time with the Lord, because everything that we're studying, everything that's being sought and searched after is Christ. It's Him. He is the Word. And that's what we're doing. We're drawing in deeper and deeper and deeper. And within every piece of the prophetic revelation, from the was in the is, confirmed from the is to come, we get more detail. We get confirmation of the time frames of where these events happen within those years. And this one's no different. This one was, again, it just makes me chuckle because it's so crystal clear. Okay, just like the other two. When you see it and you understand it, you're just like, this is crazy. You see, because here's what's happening. The story of Moses is a picture of the time of seals. You see, we've taught on this a number of times, right? So we know that Moses and the timing of them fleeing into the wilderness and all this is a picture of the time of seals. Okay? And it's about the midish point of when they flee into the wilderness. So, in relation to seals. So, what do we see? In the first month, 15th day of the month. Okay, so right at the time of Passover is when they're going to flee into the wilderness. Well, where do we know that is based on prophecy? Mark's discourse. You see, because the Mark abomination is different than the Matthew abomination. The Mark abomination is because the beast has now showed up on the scene, and it's the time of the mark of the beast, and this is about standing, which also means place where it ought not. So this is all about the mark of the beast. And what ends up happening when they flee? Well, guess what? Do you know when this fleeing is going to take place? Do you know when this mark of the beast fleeing is going to take place in the time frame of seals? It's going to be at Passover. That's right. It's going to be at the time of Passover. That's when this fleeing is coming. World War III will take place first, as you guys all know, right? So about a year and a half, 2 years, 2.5, right? Depending how that plays out. We've talked about that. So it will take place at the time of Passover when the beast gets what? Oh, wait a second. So they're fleeing at the time of Passover. You have the prophetic picture of Moses, and Moses being a portion of the remnant workers. Remember, there are 2 worker groups during the time of seals. Yes, there's the apostle group, but then there's also the Moses company and the Elijah company. And what ends up happening is here they are now fleeing into the wilderness, and while they're in the wilderness, they end up staying at what? 42. They're called the 42 stations in the wilderness. 42 places while they're in the wilderness, they end up staying. Why is that significant? Oh, of course you know it. Because when the beast shows up on the scene and he gets his power, look what happens. He gets power for 42 months. You see, so the revelation of 42 months is confirmed, I should say, in when they fled at the time of Passover and were in the wilderness for 42 months. For 40 years, but 42 stations. So what are you seeing? You're seeing the typology of the 42 stations as the picture of the timing when the beast gets his 42 months, which is confirmed at the fleeing in Mark's discourse at the abomination of desolation, which is at the timing of what? The Moses temple. What happened for those 40 years in the 42 stations of the wilderness? What were they doing? They had a portable temple with them, right? They had a portable temple. And this temple is, as you guys know, we've done teachings on this. It is so awesome. This is the revelation of the 2 temples of the end of days. There's 2 temples in the end of days, right? There are 2 temples, and back in even until the time of Christ, there were 2 types of temples. There was Moses' temple, and then there was the Solomon, the stone temple, and then of course there was the second one after Solomon's, but it was still another stone-built temple. But there were 2 types of temples. One, which was a portable temple covered in skin, right? And the other one was a stone temple, like what the Jews are waiting for their 3rd temple. So there were 2 types of temple. A portable one covered in skin, and another one made of stone. And you guys know this story. Unless you're new, what is the portable temple covered in skin? You, right? It's all believers in Christ. Christ, the Lord God dwells within us. We are the temple of God. You see? We are the temple of God. And what ends up happening at this point is when the beast gets his 42 months, at the same picture of the 42 stations in the wilderness, it's now the time of the mark of the beast. And what happens at this time of the mark of the beast? The mark of the beast is placed on. The word here says in, but let me show it to you. For those that don't grasp this, it's not actually in, it's the word on. We see this happen in a few places in the KJV, but the KJV is the one you want to be using. So you see, we'll receive the mark in, but it's actually the word on. You see? So they will receive the mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, right? Or that they worship the image and so forth, and they cannot buy or sell without it. When is this taking place? This is taking place during the 42 stations of the wilderness, during the 42 months when he has his power and authority. And so they're fleeing in at the time of Passover. And then what? Then the beast has 42 months of his power. Okay, so he's got 42 months to do his work. What happens at that point? After, well, in fact, let me first confirm in 1 Corinthians chapter 3 for you, in verse 16 and 17, that you are the temple of God. All Christians, I believe, know this, but just in case there's some that are newer, know you not that you are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy, for the temple of God is holy, which temple you are. You see, and this is why people will debate with you and argue with you to say that there is no actual third temple for the Jews that's going to be built in the end of days, because we are now the temple of God. You see? But what they failed to understand is that by the end of seals, the temple of God within, sure, it might still be within for people, but the reality is when the Lord comes at the end of the 6th year of seals and the mid-trib rapture happens, then in the start of trumpets, they're going to rebuild the actual third temple that the Jews have been waiting for. You see, because just as it was, where there was a portable temple covered in skin, followed by a temple built with stone, in the end of days, you see, you're going to have a portable temple covered in skin that's going to be until the end of seals, right? Because the temple of God still dwells within until the age of the Gentiles is done at the end of seals. And then the Lord God turns his attention back to the Jews and gathers them back, and then they're going to start rebuilding in the first half of the 7 years of trumpets. So you see how that works? You're having a prophetic picture laced in to the story of Moses and them fleeing from Egypt and staying at the 42 stations, the 42 places in the wilderness, which is a prophetic picture of the 42 months that the beast has. So what do you think happens at the end of the 6 years of seals? Well, according to Mark's discourse, you know, Mark's discourse told us that it would also be, you see this abomination of desolation in Mark chapter 13, verse 14. This is the beginning of the 42 months of the beast and the fleeing in the wilderness. We've shown that that's why the false Christs and false prophets suddenly show up and they weren't mentioned before that. We've shown incredible connections within this, right? And then it says, but in those days after that tribulation, you have the coming of the Son of Man in the clouds. Okay, this one is in. The one in Matthew is on the clouds, by the way. Okay, that same difference we talked about from Revelation 13, but this one is actually in. Well, what happens is that this coming of the Son of Man in the clouds, which is the end of the 6th year of seals, is when he's coming with paradise, and we know that he's going to defeat the beast who was and now shall not be. Well, look at when the Lord comes, but of that day and hour. You notice there's no mention of Noah here, because it's not the same story. But it is at the day and hour no one knows. Why is it the day and hour no one knows? Because it's at the end of the 6th seal. At the end of the 6th seal, 6 years of seals. So here he is coming at the day and hour no one knows. Isn't that crazy? Because that means there's one more year of seals, and then you got 7 years of trumpets, and after 6 years of trumpet judgments, it's going to be what? Matthew's discourse, the day and hour no one knows. Which means it's running from Feast of Trumpets to Feast of Trumpets. You have the evidence here of it being at the end of the 6 year seals, because we know this is the Lord coming at the end of the 6 year of seals. We see it at the end of the 6th seal. And the day and hour no one knows is the Feast of Trumpets. So what ends up happening is if you go back 42 months from the day and hour no one knows, where do you end up? Passover. Ta-da! You see, you end up right at the time of Passover. I'm not saying exactly, it's not exactly 6 months, but the 6 months is exact, but it's not the first day to the first day, because Passover is the 15th, right? The 14th, 15th. But you have the week of Passover. So that 42 months is the exact difference from going back 42 months from Tishri, and the Feast of Trumpets brings you back to Passover. But that's not where the story ends. You see, because then you get deeper insight into this. Because in Deuteronomy chapter 34, we have Moses who dies. So Moses' death is like a prophetic picture of some of the remnant workers in the Moses type, like a John the Baptist, who died and then Christ took over. Okay? That's the picture that you get at the end of Seals. There are some like John the Baptist who will die. There will be those like the Elijah, some who won't die. And what do we see here? We come to the end of the 42 months of the stations in the wilderness. And at the end of the end of the 42 stations in the wilderness, and Moses dies. You get to the end of Seals and the 42 months of Seals, and you've got the Moses company and some of those that have died who were serving the Lord during Seals. And then what happens? Then you get to Joshua chapter 1. And Joshua, the son of Nun, takes over for Moses and brings them into the promised land. What do we know happens at the end of the 6th year of Seals? Joshua, Yeshua, Jesus, brings them over back into the land. The mid-trib great multitude is coming in what? In the 7th year of Seals, correct? At the end of the 6th, and the day and hour no one knows, there's the Lord seen coming on heavenly Mount Zion, or in the clouds with heavenly Mount Zion for the mid-trib great multitude. But he's got to destroy all the enemies that came first, seal the 144,000, and then bring in the mid-trib great multitude. And then what? Other sheep he has also, and he gathers them back into the land, into Israel. Well, guess what? What do we know about the story of Joshua? What do we know about the story of Joshua? We did the count, as you recall, from Christ when he began to be 30 in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, which equals 29 AD. And the debate was whether it was 26, 27, 28, or 29. But it wasn't a debate as to why it was in this range, because all of the history shows it's in this range. None of them put it over here, and none of them put it over here. The debate is as to when he took over by himself. Was it when he was co-regent? Okay, the reality is when he took over by himself back from 14 AD in September, and when you count the 15th year, you end up in 29 AD, which is where we are in our count today, because what we then found out, this is from Luke chapter 3, then you go to Luke chapter 4, and we know there's anywhere, they say, from about 2 months to about a year and a half to when Jesus declared the Jubilee in Luke chapter 4. Which means, if you look at our count, it's 1 year and 3 months. So we got 15 months right in that range that they say, because the scriptures themselves don't tell us exactly how long it was. So from this Jubilee count, this is a leg up that we have on the Jews. If we can determine the Jubilee that Jesus decreed in Luke chapter 4, and we know how to count it, which is by 49, because the Jubilee is the first year of the next set of 7, which starts the 49. Well, what if we count backwards? And as you guys know, we went back 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. We went all the way back, We were able to confirm Jesus' birthday, of course, in 2 BC, just as it was shown in the sun, moon, and stars. And we confirm, we go back. And we found out, and we shared this in a recent teaching, if you go search it up, what year did Joshua cross them over into the promised land? Right? Which means they had never been in the land. Now they were brought into the land of promise and they were going to be having the Passover meal. When did that happen? 1406 BC. Now, what did we explain about that? That it wouldn't really make much sense in the long count of these sevens that have been going on since the beginning of creation. Okay? There is a seven that the Lord God, it's always running. It's always continuously running by sevens. It always has since the beginning of creation and will never stop. The question is, can we understand where these sevens are? And the biggest clue is Luke chapter 4, and starting from 3, so we can understand the time frame of when Jesus would have made the decree of the Jubilee in Luke chapter 4. So in understanding that, I didn't write the history books that said it was 1406. It's the people who studied these things for decades, generations that have studied these things, that said that the time when Joshua brought them over into the promised land, it was in 1406 BC. So if we go to the spring of 1406 BC, which is Passover time, this would have been the time frame when they came into the land, and it was 1406. Now, what's so important about this? In the count from Christ, in the declaration of the Jubilee, it equaled a Sabbath. Well, when you understand how important that is you could say, well, of course, it's just a year zero because they hadn't been in the land before. So, of course, it's a year zero. But you have to understand that there has always been a seven that existed. That's always been accounting from seven since the beginning of creation. And we get the clue from Luke chapter 4 when we understand in the timing of Luke 3 and Luke 4. And so in that timing, we did this count back from Luke 4 and when he would have declared the Jubilee, and we come to a seventh year Sabbath. You see, which means it was a year zero in the seven of counts and the fact that they hadn't been there. And why was this important? Because in Leviticus 25, it says, when you come into the land which I shall give you, then shall you sow 6 years. So there's your starting of sowing and reaping. And the seventh will be a Sabbath. You see? So they started sowing in the fall of that year that they came in of 1406 BC. You see how crazy that is? It falls exactly in a Sabbath year. Now, that's interesting on its own. You see, but remember, it's the revelation of prophecy. It's the revelation of prophecy, brothers and sisters, that confirms these things for us. What does it really matter that it was a seventh year Sabbath? You want to know what matters? Is because Moses died and Joshua crossed them over into the promised land. Why does it matter? Because in the end of days, what do we know? We know that in the seventh year of seals, so here's the Lord, at the end of the sixth year of seals, the Lord is coming on the day and hour no one knows. Okay, this is the Tishri side from fall to fall. The Lord is coming, like Mark's discourse, on the day and hour no one knows, at the end of the sixth year of seals. Moses, the worker group, a portion of those workers died, putting their necks on the line for the Lord. And then what happens? Joshua took over for Moses. Yeshua, takes over for the worker groups. And what happens? In the seventh year of seals is the mid-trib great multitude. But guess what? Do you want to know how perfectly this aligns? This seventh year, when did they get raptured? Now, they start to be brought in at the fall feast, right? But they don't actually go. The mid-trib great multitude rapture doesn't actually happen until Passover in the seventh year. Not until Passover of the seventh year of seals. So how perfect that the 42 months ends from Passover to trumpets time. The Lord defeats him and the 10 kings that are with him. And it's about 6 months later that the mid-trib comes in. And it's what? It's Passover. When did Joshua take them over? In the Sabbath year. In the seventh year. At Passover. You see, here's the thing. We understood this seventh year of the Sabbath year rest of the seventh year of seals okay, that the 7th year of seals was in the 7th year at Passover, was going to be the mid-trib great multitude. And then when we discovered, to see if we had understood this count, if we had really understood this count of where Jesus declared the Jubilee, and if we thought, if we can go back into BC and see where it lands, what can we confirm? Well, we know that it shouldn't have landed on 654-3-2-1 or 1-2-3-4-5-6. It could only land on a 7 to equal the same prophetic picture that it equals in the end of days. It was the end of days that confirmed to us that Moses is dying, Joshua taking them into the promised land would be in a Sabbath year, and when he does it, it would be at the time of Passover. It just so happened we taught on this from the story of Moses to the end of Deuteronomy to Joshua. We taught on this years ago, that it was the picture of seals to the end of seals, and then going into trumpets once he brings them into the promised land at the time of Passover. You see, we already understood this from the Revelation. It brought clarity to the story of Moses going into Joshua that takes over. And then we went and followed it, and we went and tracked it all the way back from account from Christ when he declares the Jubilee, and it turns out it lands in a 7th year, and in the is to come, we knew that wherever it was in the was needed to be in a Sabbath year, because that's exactly what it would be in the is to come. And it did. On every account, it was perfectly aligned. You see how crazy that is? It's the revelation of prophecy that brought this clarity, brothers and sisters. It is always the prophecies. It's the understanding. It's that revelation that did it. And then you want to really add to this. I mean, it gets crazy, right? Because we got the 3 feasts of the Lord, 7 days of Passover, Feast of Weeks, 7 days of Tabernacles, and then the 8th day of Tabernacles, which is like a picture of the Jubilee, the new beginning. And what did we find out? That it's 6 days. And then the 7th day of unleavened bread is the solemn assembly. What do we know? 6 years of seals. And in the 7th year is the year of the mid-trib great multitude. The 7 days are as the 7 years of seals. It's like the story of creation, right? You have the 6 days, and the 7th is rest. You have the 6 seals, and the 7th is the solemn assembly. You see, it's a repeating picture. You have the story of Moses until the end of the 6th year picture. And then you have Joshua, because Jesus has now come with heavenly Mount Zion to gather them to paradise. But he doesn't gather them until the midst of the 7th year, which is going to be at the time of Passover. And how are we able to prove this? Oh, how about this one, right? Jeremiah 31 is where this prophecy begins, right? Where this picture starts. Because it was something that must have had people scratching their heads forever. I know it did me, right? Where we see in Jeremiah 31 verse 9, it says, "And Ephraim is my firstborn." It's like, what? Ephraim is my firstborn? It's kind of strange, right? I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Oh, wait, I thought it was supposed to be a connection to Jesus, right? Are we told Jesus is the tribe of Judah? So what's all this with Ephraim? And this is where the church has completely missed it and think that the Jews have missed the only coming of Christ until he returns feet down. When you understand the revelation of the 14 years and what's happening at the end of the 6th year of seals and into the 7th year, you realize what this Ephraim is all about. And it's so awesome. You see, how did we come to understand these things? The truth in the understanding of the is to come. These things have brought clarity and confirmed the understanding of it. In Jeremiah 31, starting in verse 8, "I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the coasts of the earth, and with them the blind and the lame, the woman with child, and her that travaileth with child. Together a great company shall return thither." Remember this one? How powerful was this? This was one of our sisters, Rebecca, who discovered this one. This is in the Septuagint. So it's Jeremiah 31, but in the Septuagint, it's in chapter 38. Okay? So Jeremiah 31, verse 8. Listen to what it says. The same verse we just read. Behold, I bring them from the north and will gather them from the ends of the earth to the feast of Passover. And the people shall beget a great multitude, and they shall return thither. You see what that's saying? Do you know what that is? If you've never seen this before or understood this before, it's Revelation chapter 7. You see, it's the mid-trib great multitude which no man can number. And what did it say? When was Ephraim, who is the firstborn, when is this group going to be gathered? At the time of Passover, which is confirming what we talked about right here. The 6 days as the 6 years, and then in the 7th year, in the 7th day, is going to be the solemn assembly. That 7th year. Why? Because it's 6 years, right? You got the 42. At the end of the 42, just like Joshua, Moses dies, Joshua takes over. And when he takes them over into the promised land, it's a 7th year, just like it was in 1406. And when he takes them over in the springtime at the time to observe the Passover. It's so absolutely incredible. And so this is why I say, when people want to come at you and say, it's not pre, mid, and post, you don't know what you're talking about, Luke, Mark, and Matthew, and trying to say it's all different people being spoken to, 3 different groups, when it's just one, it's only 7 years. They have no idea what they're talking about. You see, and it's not to be rude. Don't be rude. Don't, just say, look, I don't know what more to tell you if you're not willing to look at these teachings. You have to spend a little bit of time to see for yourself and then ask questions. You see, but I've never found one of those people that want to argue about it all who have ever actually watched the intro series. You see? So nobody, they like to say things, but nobody wants to come and try to defend anything. There's no way you're going to be, if we were in a court of law, we were bringing all of this evidence together, and they came with their usual 7 years of Matthew and Revelation and Daniel and 1 or 2 other places, they'd get thrown out. It wouldn't be a fair fight. It's incredible, guys. It is the revelation of the end of days. The mid-trib is coming in at the time of Passover. You see, and when Christ is coming, as we just saw in Jeremiah, and all this happens at the time of Passover for the mid-trib great multitude, we know that it says Ephraim. Now, why would it say Ephraim? You guessed it. We know that story. To the Jews, right? To the Christians and the church, this is where they really butt heads with Jews. But for us, we've got the mesh that combines them together. And it's the revelation of the Gospels and who they're speaking to with the 14 years, revealing it from the is and from the was to the is to come. You see, that the Messiah ben Joseph, or Mashiach ben Yosef, also known as Mashiach ben Ephraim. So we've said this many times. Ben Joseph or Ben Ephraim, it means the same thing. And we shared this in a previous teaching, right? You know how awesome it was that in Luke chapter 3, right, when the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, and it says Jesus began to be about 30 years, as was supposed the son of Joseph, right? You guys know why it was as supposed the son of Joseph. Because when you go to John chapter 1, and they say, we have found the Messiah, the one who is the son of Joseph. No, that's why it said, as was believed the son of Joseph. Because they were looking for this guy. They were looking for the Messiah ben Joseph, the Messiah ben Ephraim. You see, it wasn't the Messiah ben Ephraim that the Jews had understood through their ancient prophecies. You see, that Messiah, that representation of Christ as Messiah ben Joseph isn't until the end of seals, as you guys know, right? We've broken this down. We've explained this before. And you see, even they talk about it in the apocalypse of Zerubbabel, that it says, after his death, there's a period of calamities which will befall Israel, and God will then resurrect the dead and usher in the Messianic age. You see, but they also talk about the Messiah ben Joseph, who's going to fight against the enemy and die, but also be victorious. You see, they talk about the Messiah ben Joseph, who's going to be overseeing the responsibility of rebuilding the temple. But is he going to rebuild the temple? No, we know whose responsibility that is. Excuse me, because there's also a Messiah ben David. Right? There's the story of the two messiahs that the Jews have understood through their teachings very well, but the church discards because they can't understand it. We know that there's what? The Messiah ben Joseph, the Yeshua Joshua, who is the Messiah ben Joseph, the high priest and king. This is the Lord at the end of the 6th year of seals and into trumpets. But the branch is the Messiah ben David, which is represented, as we know, by whoever will play or whoever will be that Zerubbabel type in the end of days. So who's responsible? Who's rebuilding the temple? Right? Who's responsible for the overseeing of the rebuilding of the temple? It's not the high priest and king Joshua, Yeshua, Jesus. It's the Messiah ben David. Okay? It's whoever the Zerubbabel type is going to be. And we see this in Revelation 14. We see now the Lord standing on Mount Zion with the 144,000, and they're going to follow the Lamb wheresoever he goes. You see, now we've come to the end of seals. The mid-trib great multitude has come in. The Lord has now shown up on heavenly Mount Zion, having come in the clouds on the day and hour no one knows. In the midst of the 7th year, he gathers them in at the mid-trib great multitude at the time of Passover. And now we're coming to the end of seals and the start of trumpets. The 144,000 are with the Lord standing on heavenly Mount Zion, and they're about to be sent out, and they follow the Lamb wheresoever he goes. So what is Joshua, Yeshua, Jesus, high priest and king here? What is he doing at this point? He is the high priest. The kingship is going to be between him and David, but he is the high priest, the one that's got the direct connection to the Father, the higher one, right? And what's he going to do? He's the one overseeing the leading of the 144,000. And you see in Zechariah chapter 4 that Zerubbabel is the one who laid the foundation in the midst of seals. And so he's going to be the one, it says, that is going to finish the temple. Okay? So what happens now is we go to Zechariah chapter 8. Zechariah chapter 8, 14 chapters, 14 years. You see, there's another example, isn't it? Because it was the revelation of 14 years that began to show us through the book of Psalms that there were chapters to years. And it's called the Psalms of Ascent, it just so happens. I didn't discover this. There were 14, and then the 15th Psalm, which is from, I think, 18 to 33, are the Psalms of Ascent. Okay, I don't know where they discovered this or how they discovered this, but it's 14 and then the 15th. It's prophetic to the end of days. They don't realize it, but we show it. And then what happened? Because of the revelation of the 14 years, it dawned on me to go look at the books of the Bible to see if there were any that were 14 chapters long. And of course, we have one to the Jews and one to the Gentiles with the house of Israel. Hosea and Zechariah. Both of them prophetically 14 years in chapters to years. So when you get to Zechariah chapter 8, what year are you in? 7 years of seals are done. And you're at what? You're at the start of trumpets. And the Lord is there. He's there on heavenly Mount Zion. Okay? It's now the mountain of the Lord. And what does he tell the people? That it's now going to be time to build. Let your hands be strong. Okay? Because why? Because it says, thus saith the Lord of hosts, let your hands be strong, you that hear in these days these words by the mouth of the prophets, which were in the day that the foundation of the Lord of hosts was laid, which was in the midst of seals, that the temple might be built. So now they're going to start rebuilding the temple. He says you couldn't do it before because there was no peace, for I set everyone against his neighbor. That's the red horse rider that started. So they couldn't do anything except lay the foundation during the time of seals. The foundation is going to be finished. It's going to be laid in the 4th year of seals. And that's all that's going to get done until what? Until the Lord is there on heavenly Mount Zion. He has come as the Messiah ben Joseph / Ephraim, and Messiah ben David, who's already a person alive, is going to be there as well. He will have been the one responsible for building the foundation during seals. So when the Lord comes at the end of the 6th year of seals, bang, now you're seeing this time frame. And here we are. The temple is now about to start being rebuilt at the beginning or at the time of the start of trumpets, which is the 8th year in tribulation. And what are they going to be building? The physical, the stone temple, if you will. Okay? Remember, there were 2 types in the Old Testament. There was the portable one covered in skins, and guess what? That one is over at the mid-trib great multitude. The temple that is within, the portable temple covered in skins, is now finished. So you've got the prophetic picture from the time of Moses and them in the wilderness having the portable temple covered in skin. You had the 42 stations from when they fled at the time of Passover, connected to Mark's discourse fleeing, because of the mark of the beast put on the portable temple covered with skin, which is going to happen during 42 months, which is the typology of the 42 stations. And when it's all over, Moses dies, Joshua takes them over into the promised land. The mid-trib great multitude happens at the Passover of that 7th year. And then it's going to be what? They're now going to be in the land, and the only thing that's left is the rebuilding of now the other type of temple, which is the stone temple. That's the one that the Jews are looking for, that they've been calling the third temple. You see? All of this stuff, all of it, and its timing and its understanding comes from the revelation of the Gospels and the 14 years. Isn't this bananas? Every single one of these pieces is in order. The only thing we desire, and everybody who is in Christ Spirit-filled desires, is when, Lord, when is this going to come? Well, this is kind of what we're showing. This is kind of what's tied into everything that I'm showing and everything that I'm building you to. Because as we've shown these things with the timing from Christ's birth to when he began to be 30 in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, to his declaration of the Jubilee. We then went backwards to 1406 and confirmed the timing of Joshua, who is the picture of Joshua, Yeshua, Jesus when he comes. And the Joshua, Yeshua, Jesus when he comes is Ephraim, the firstborn, who's going to take them at Passover in the 7th year, which is exactly the picture. And who did he take over? The ones that were bringing the portable temple covered in skin. But when that comes to an end at the end of seals, we're now going to be at a point where the physical temple is going to be the focus. The Lord is there on heavenly Mount Zion. Messiah ben Joseph or Messiah ben Ephraim. And then the Messiah ben David is there. Messiah ben David is the one responsible for the overseeing of the rebuilding of the temple. And Messiah ben Joseph / Ephraim is the one responsible over the 144,000 over the priestly line. So where are we in this? What did the revelation of the 14 years of the is to come and how all of this plays out, how does this connect to what was? Well, how about 1 Kings chapter 6? You guys remember this one? This is awesome. They're all awesome, right? Because every single one of these is proven. It's not that, oh, maybe this is what's going to happen. Maybe this is where it is. No, we can prove it. The only thing is, where is it really going to start? Where is the beginning? If the Jews' calendar count of years is correct, we got over 200 years to go. If we can prove that it's not correct, then we're within a 1 year max period that's left, maximum, but most likely within a month to less than a year. Like I said in the last teaching, this should make you smile and beam and remind you. Let this be part of your strength in Christ, that no matter what comes, thy will be done, Lord. No matter what. This is the type of thing to understand this. You see, it's not about, like we keep saying, I've been talking about this a fair bit in recent past, right? About the cherry on top. You know, we all still desire to have that cherry on top before going digging into everything else, just like little kids. But this is all of that ice cream and the nuts and the sauces and everything. That's what all of this revelation is. But within all of this, as we get closer to the top, man, can it be possible we have that cherry? Here's the thing, we might not be able to bite into that cherry yet, but I believe it's being placed right on top of that load of ice cream and toppings. That it's right there. Because why? Because we've understood the time of Christ. We've been able to count from Luke in order and its revelation and what was happening in Luke 3 and 4. That when we took it even from the time of Christ and brought it to the revelation of the end of days, what ended up happening? That the end of the 14th year is the Jubilee. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. And if we go back 1,500 years or 1,400 and change years, we end up with it being a Sabbath when Joshua took them over into the promised land after Moses. And that's the picture of the end of the 6th year of seals. And in the 7th year of seals, which is exactly the count being a 7th year in the 14 years, the 7th year of seals, when Jesus comes and takes them over into the promised land at the time of Passover. What are the chances? What are the chances? But do you know there's still another piece that we can add into this picture? And that if the Jubilee brings us to the Jubilee in that final 14th year, as the story of Moses, as the story of Noah, we know that the final 14th year is the story of Noah, and then it has to be the Jubilee. We know that that count from Christ brings us to 14 years from now to the final Jubilee. And when we go backwards, it brings us to Jesus' birth, because the 29th AD was the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, and Jesus began to be 30. We count back 30 years from there, and we discovered that it's true that Jesus was born in 2 BC. We count back from that same Jubilee, and we go all the way back to Joshua taking them over into the promised land after Moses, which is a picture of the end of the 6th year of seals into the 7th year of seals. And it's the 7th year exactly like it has to be in the 7th year of seals. What are the chances? Do you understand what I'm saying? What are the chances? From the was to the is to come. Craziness. It's so beautiful. But there's another piece of evidence. I'm building all of this up so that you can see it, you can track it, you can understand that it's prophecy that reveals what was and what is. That brings clarity and understanding to it. And once that clarity and understanding from the was and the is brought into the picture, it helps us with even sharper understanding of what will take place in the 14 years and the above. It's so powerful. So that's why I say all of this, not just the cherry on top, all of this should be the stuff that excites you. And the last piece that should really excite you is the cherry on top. This is so awesome. So look what happens here. How about this revelation? What's this revelation about? Lo and behold, it's all about the stone-built temple. So here we are. We've come to the end of seals. We've come to the end of the portable temple covered in skins. And this portable temple covered in skins is the Lord within. And it comes to the end at the end of the Gentile age of seals. And now we're going into the 7 years of trumpets. We know that he says, let your hands be strong, because they're about to start rebuilding the temple. And what do we see from the time of the first temple being built? The stone temple, the second type of temple in the was. Here it is. 1 Kings chapter 6, 37 and 38. In the 4th year was the foundation of the house of the Lord laid. Again, don't worry about the months. And what I mean by that is we're not focusing on the months that it was done, because it doesn't mean they're going to be exactly done in those months in the years to come. But the overall picture is absolute. Now, you see, the rest of the world in prophecy or just in church history can read this and say, oh, it was laid in the 4th year. In the 11th year was the house finally finished. So from the 4th year when the foundation was laid until the temple was built, it was 7 years in building. So it happened in the 4th year with the foundation, in the 11th year, which means about 10 years and change, right? I would say in the 11th year. So it's 10 years, and in the 11th year, so say about 6 months in, okay? So about 10 and a half years, which is in the 11th year, was the temple finished, was the house of God finished. So from the 4th year until in the 11th, it was 7 years in building. Now, everybody else has read this throughout all of history. Do you think any of them understood that it was a prophetic picture also laid right there for the end of days? How many people do you think have ever discovered that? None. None, except what we've been blessed for here. Why? Because we have the revelation of the 14 years. You see? 4 years from what? In the prophetic, 4 years from what? Obviously, it would be from year 1 to year 4. And then what? 7 years in building puts them in the 11th year when the temple is done. Isn't that precisely the revelation of the end of days? Isn't that precisely what we read about in Zechariah chapter, in the book of Zechariah that has 14 chapters? What do we see in chapter 4? The foundation was laid. In Zechariah chapter 4, which would be in the 4th year, was the foundation laid, even within the book of Zechariah. And what happens when you go to Zechariah chapter 11? The temple we know is complete, but now the Lord has to break the covenant, right? And it's because of the people, because something has happened in the 11th year, which is about 10 and a half years in. Look at what it says. Zechariah chapter 11. So you saw in chapter 8, let your hands be strong, because now they got to start building. By the time you get to, so you got 8, you got 9, you got 10, and then you got into the 11th year, which is in the 4th year of trumpet judgments. Ding, 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 ding. Remember that. In the 4th year of trumpet judgments, now the temple, which is a total of 11 years or 10 and a half years in the 11th year, 10 years plus the half, that half is in the 11th year. You're in chapter 11, and Jesus, the covenant now has to be broken because of what the people have done. The temple has been rebuilt. The covenant is now broken because of what the people have done. Well, what have the people done? Well, what if we go to one of my favorites, Psalms 90 and 10? Psalms 90 and 10 said, the days of our years are 70, and if by reason of strength, they're 80. Okay, so you got 70 to 80 years. That's what? 10 years. It's going to be labor and sorrow. That means your strength is going to be labor and sorrow. Remember what these words mean? They mean tribulation, right? It means pain, sorrow, travail. It's saying 10 years of tribulation. Then it says, for it is soon. A short period of time. I always say about 6 months, maybe a couple months, maybe 5 months, 6 months, 7 months. Soon, a short period of time of a few months, cut off. And then what does it say? So you're in the 11th year, you're at 10 years and a few months. That's in the 11th year. Like Zechariah chapter 11. Like the temple was finished in the 11th year. And then what? And we fly away. You know that this fly away is the connection to Revelation chapter 12, verse 14, when they fly away on the wings of an eagle, right? For the final 3.5 years, right? The time and times and half a time, which would make this 14 years. There's your 14 years again, you see? And it has what? A 10.5 year approximately, or in the 11th year, and then the final 3.5 years. What is this period? What is this cutoff time? It's because Satan's been cast down. So you had World War III, you then had 42 months, right? Then you had the Lord come, destroy the beast and the enemies, bring in the mid-trib great multitude. Then you had your 1,260 days, about the first half of trumpet judgments, which puts you into about 10.5 years, or in the 11th year. And Michael and his angels defeat the dragon and his angels. Satan and his are cast down to the earth, right? With his fallen angels, they're cast down to the earth. And what ends up happening? They know that they now have but a short time. This short time is what? The 2.5 of the final 3.5 years, because you know that the Lord returns at the start of the 14th year. You see? And it's the days of Noah that we talked about earlier. You see how it all ties in and all brings it together? And then you see, of course, in verse 14, when he is cast down, They now flee on the wings of an eagle into the wilderness for the final three and a half of in those final 3.5 years of the 14. So 10 and a half approximately to the end of 14 years is 3.5 years. And of those 3.5 years, we know Satan and the beast and false prophet, they get 2.5 to wreak all their havoc, and then the Lord returns and destroys them all in that final 14th year is Noah. So what ends up happening at the mid trumpets at that 10.5 year time frame, which is the 4th year of trumpet judgments. It is in the 11th year since the tribulation started. It is the approximately 10.5 years, which is in the 11th year, which is the 4th year of trumpet judgments. Who's coming at that point? Satan has been cast down, and when he's cast down, what happens? It's the 5th trumpet, and it's the key to the bottomless pit. So the key to the bottomless pit is given, and the beast who was in the bottomless pit is now coming back. So in Revelation chapter 17, verse 8, the beast that was his 42 months, then is not, because the first half of trumpets, he was in the pit, he was defeated, shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. You see why people can't understand this? There's no way you can understand this without the revelation of 14 years. You see how powerful all that is? So now at mid trumpets, he shall ascend out of the bottomless pit because the key was given to now open the pit, and the beast who was and then is not shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. And where is he going? Where is he going? 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3 and 4. It says, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who oppose and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So what ends up happening? The temple is defiled, right? What temple? He first went after the portable temple covered in skins. Now there is a physical temple that was rebuilt. Messiah gets now cut off after it's been rebuilt in the 11th year, in the 4th year of trumpet judgments. And what happens? Well, if we go to Daniel chapter 9, we're going to see that when the beast comes back from the pit, we know it's the same prophetic picture as to the revelation of Daniel chapter 9. We've done many teachings of this over the years, and you see that after the 62 weeks, Messiah is cut off, but not for himself, but the people of the prince that shall come, listen to this, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and unto the end thereof shall be a flood, which is exactly what you see in Revelation 12:14, when he goes after them with a flood, okay? And unto the end of the war. Why is there a war? Because when the beast comes out of the pit, and Satan, the false prophet, and the beast are there, they now go after the two witnesses, which are the Messiah ben Joseph / Ephraim and Messiah ben David. And this war lasts, as you know, for 2.5 of the final 3.5 years, according to Daniel chapter 12. Okay, times and half a time. That's 2.5 out of the final 3.5. And what happens? That leaves 1 year. And look at that. 1 week as a week of years, meaning each week is the representation of a year. There's 1 year left. And this is literally the return of the Lord, feet down on the Mount of Olives, destroying them and so forth. But look what's happening. When the beast is released, when the pit has been opened, what's he doing? Destroying the city and the sanctuary. You see, he's going to step in and declare himself to be God. And it's going to defile it and destroy it and be a wreck and a ruin to it, obviously, because the beast has gone in there to declare himself God. When does this happen? Okay? Well, it happens in the 11th year, after the temple has been rebuilt. Confirmed to us from the physical temple that was laid in the time of Solomon. You see that? After the portable temple that was done with Moses. And so now, when we're in Matthew's portion, 7 years, as Mark's was the 6 years to the 7th year of seals, Matthew's is the 6 years to the 7 years of trumpet judgments. So in Matthew chapter 24, verse 15, the abomination of desolation that's spoken of here, stand in the holy place. This is not standing where it ought not or placed where it ought not. This is in the holy place because the temple was rebuilt. So what's happening? The abomination of desolation in the holy place being the physical temple that was rebuilt. When? According to the revelation of prophecy, it happens in the 11th year. You see, did we know that the 14 years and the story of Zechariah and the covenant being broken at the time of Satan being cast down in the equivalent time frame, did we already know that it was connected to Zechariah chapter 11, or did we already understand it because of the 14 years? We understood the revelation of the 14 years first, and when Zechariah was discovered, it lined up. Or how about 1 Kings chapter 6? Did we find 1 Kings chapter 6 and then try to build the revelation of the 14 years around 1 Kings chapter 6? Of course not. It was the revelation of the 14 years and many years of study that brought about how the revelation was playing out. Then we come across 1 Kings chapter 6 and find out that the temple foundation is laid in the 4th year, just like in Zechariah chapter 4, just like in 1 Kings chapter 6. And then it's what? 7 years, and in that 7th year, the temple is getting built, and the temple is built, and once it's finished being built, Satan is cast down, the covenant is now broken. When did the temple actually start being built prophetically in the end of days? In the 8th year. Oh, like the beginning of trumpet judgments, which Zechariah chapter 8, Lord God is now there on heavenly Mount Zion and says, let your hands be strong because it's time to build. It's now finished in the 4th year of trumpet judgments, which is the 11th year. Okay? The 11th is what? The 4th year. 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7 of seals, 7 of trumpets. In the 7 years of trumpets, starting from the 8th of tribulation, 1, 2, 3, 4. How long have we known that it was going to be in the 4th year, right? Or in the 11th year, but in the 4th year of trumpets, in the cycles of sevens. These are all cycles of sevens, right? And this is the final 7 right here. And the 14th year is the 49th year, which is why Matthew chapter 24, after the abomination of desolation that takes place, which is right here, in the 4th year of trumpet judgments, or in the 11th year of tribulation, you have the final 14th year, the 7th year of trumpet judgments, the 14th year of tribulation, which is the 49th year in the big picture of the 7 times 7, is as it was in the days of Noah at the return of the Lord, feet down on the Mount of Olives at the start of the 14th year. To then what? The final Jubilee. And what are the 7 years of trumpets like? They're the 7 days of tabernacles. The 7 days of tabernacles, the solemn assembly isn't in the 7th year or in the 7th day of tabernacles. It's in the 8th. So those who fled on the wings of an eagle in the 11th year for 3.5 years aren't coming back until what? The time of the solemn assembly in the Jubilee year. And when Daniel says that's 2.5 years that it will be for the beast with all of them, is because it's 2.5 years from that same time until the Lord returns feet down and destroys them in that final year. And then at the 10 days after that year, he declares the Jubilee, and those who fled in the wilderness for the final 3.5 years will then now return for what? The solemn assembly of the 8th day of tabernacles, which is a picture of the new beginning as the 8th year of trumpets, or the 15th year since tribulation started, which is the picture of the Jubilee at the end of the 7 times 7. You understand? Every single part and piece of everything that I've shared with you is directly in its place in order of its timing throughout the end of days. Revealed from the was to the is to come. And without the is to come, you could have never gotten the understanding from the was and the is. It was staring us in the face for generation after generation. It took the revelation of who the Gospels are speaking to reveal the above in 14 years understanding. So, where are we now? We're in the we're in the 4th year of trumpets. Okay? In the 4th year of trumpet judgments, your abomination of desolation is now taking place, and this is when they flee, right? It's the same fleeing from Revelation chapter 12, 14. We know that the Satan and the beast and the false prophet, all three of them, are now together because now the pit has been opened and he has gone into the temple, right? Defeated the Lord and them. They're about to break out in this battle that will last 2.5 of the final 3.5 years. And then what do we know? Remember what they said about Messiah ben Joseph? They can't understand, but there's something about he has to die. So he defeated the enemy at the end of seals, at the end of the 6th year of seals, but then he's going to die. As you know, this is a very touchy subject, but we've done teachings on this. I'm not going to go deep into it. He dies, but he's going to be resurrected. Remember the 2 witnesses for 3.5 days. Okay? That mystery of Christ being in the grave for 3.5 days, it never happened yet. It's still prophecy of what's coming. And it's a representation of the 2 witnesses. Then, boom, they come up, and then the Lord will return feet down on the Mount of Olives. And that's the final start of the 14th year. So they've understood it, but they all still debate within Judaism. They still debate and disagree on some of these things because they can't understand how he could be victorious yet be defeated. You see, we can prove it. We can show, we can bring the harmony together of something that's counter to the Christians' belief, and yet the Jews have it, and it's the revelation of who the Gospels are speaking to in the 14 years that brings it all together. Okay? So, again, what happens at this point in the 4th year of trumpet judgments, or in the 11th year? The temple has been rebuilt. Bang, Satan is lost. He is cast down with his angels. The pit is open. The beast comes back, and the beast going into the temple that has been rebuilt is the abomination of desolation in Matthew's discourse. We saw in Daniel, as you just saw in Daniel chapter 9, that this is the point when the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. You see, so what's happening? As he goes in, it's being defiled and it's being destroyed and everything else. So just as the portable temple covered in skins is defiled for those who take the mark of the beast, now we have the beast coming up from the pit going into the physical temple that was rebuilt. The 2 types of temples, like it was in the was, shall be in the is to come. And what he's going to do in that one is go into that one himself, and that one will be defiled and destroyed and so forth. Why is this important for us? Why is this important? And what is it that I'm getting to? Why is it so important to understand that it's in the 4th year of trumpet judgments? Is this something that we've recently understood? No, we have understood this for years. We know it's in the 11th year. We know it's the equivalent of the 4th year of trumpet judgments. After the 7 years of seals, you have the 7 years of trumpets. The 11th year is the 4th year of trumpet judgments when what? When destruction comes upon the temple. So let's recap a little bit of this. If the 7th year of seals at the time of Passover is the equivalent of Joshua, and we went back to the time of Joshua from Christ, and when we did this, we ended up with the 7th year, them coming in at the time of Passover. And when we did this count from Christ and from his birth, proving the year of his birth and proving from the historical documents that they're not debating that it didn't happen within these years time frame. Nobody's debating way after or much earlier. It's all right in these years time frame. And we discovered that this would then be the accounting of the Jubilee. When we counted this forward, we didn't only get this happening in the 7th year, we got Jesus returning feet down on the day and hour no one knows, as the 49th year, as the days of Noah, when he would then declare the Jubilee on the 10th day of atonement after the 1 year and 10 days from the 49th year. So, if that's the case, and we've been able to prove each and every one of these parts, and these are counts that come from a decree of Christ, confirmed by the time frame of a year, of about, what do they say, about 2 months up to about a year and a half. We're going to stretch and say maybe even to 2.5 years, which means the stretching is really a stretch because that gives us maybe another year. But the reality is we can only have maybe less than a month, right? Potentially that time that this is pointing to, the final option for this year of July 22nd, 23rd, depending where you live on the earth, it all equals this. Everything I'm showing you. Everything that I'm showing you. Well, guess what? If in the 4th year, you see that? If the 4th year of trumpet judgments, which is the 11th year and what we're talking about now, is the time when what? Is the time when Satan is cast down and the pit is opened and the defilement and the destruction of the temple comes. Of which temple? The one like in the wilderness covered in skins and portable? No. The physical temple covered in stone, built with stone, is going to be built as you saw. Let your hands be strong. Zechariah chapter 8, the 1st year of trumpet judgments. In the 4th year of trumpet judgments, it's built and then Satan is cast down. The pit is open. He's going to go in and the beast is going to defile it and destruction upon the temple comes. If that is indeed true, and we have understood this from prophecy, you're going to see the whole story of what I'm weaving together here from the beginning, is that if the revelation and the understanding of these things from the days of Noah in Matthew to Mark's discourse and the day and hour no one knows, to Moses to Joshua, going from BC into the future, both of them equaling the 7th year, this count being from a count of Christ, and knowing that the destruction of the temple comes in the 4th year of trumpet judgments. What do you think the historical relevance is that the temple must also have been destroyed in the 4th year of the cycle of sevens? Okay? What are the chances that the temple that Christ was in, okay, in Jesus' time, what are the chances we can find out the year of its destruction and confirm it, and find out the year of the cycles of sevens? What year in 7-year Sabbath cycles did the destruction of the temple actually take place? Well, for that, let's look into a little bit of history. Okay? So we're told it was 70 AD, but not everybody's in agreement because they'll say it's between 69 and 70. Okay? So which year was the second temple destroyed? 69 or 70? And even from that, it even says there are some people that might say 68. Okay? But generally, it's 69 or 70. Now, remember what we said about the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar? Okay? Remember what we said about the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, that people know they've got it at 29 AD. The only discrepancy that people have is, are they counting it from when he began his reign by himself or when he was co-regent? The answer is when he began his reign by himself. If you count from when he began his reign by himself, then the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar is 29 AD. Okay? And then If it's a couple months up to about a year and a half, well, we have 15 months and Jesus' decree of the Jubilee from Luke chapter 3 into Luke chapter 4. Okay? That's where all of these connections from the BC into the future are confirming for us. So, from this connection, the Jews don't have it. You see, the Jews don't put any faith in the scriptures of the New Testament because they don't believe in Jesus. So because they don't believe in Jesus, they don't look to this 15th year of Tiberius Caesar and Jesus began to be 30. They're not looking at all of this. So do you know what the Jews do? They do the same thing that the church does in one aspect. They go back to the story of creation. They go back to the story of Adam, just like many in the church do. And they try to pinpoint the year that Adam was created and believe they understand it, and that all they have to do is take the year that they're in. Okay, this was back in 2008, 5768, and they say, based on this, we can count back our Sabbath years, and when we count back Sabbath years, look what they do. By counting back, they do Sabbath year counts. Watch this, watch this. It says, actually, let's start here. So, first of all, so that everything lines up just perfectly for them, they count it as 420 years. Wait a second, 420 years from what? Well, they try to count the story of Daniel as the 70 weeks, which is 490. The Jews say that it's 490, but the 70 years are part of the 490, so that there's only 420 left. So it's really 420 and not 490. Okay? But is that what it says? Do you know that the Jews, when they teach in their synagogues, don't teach using the scriptures? They teach using rabbis' teachings. So they all, whatever church, whatever denomination of Judaism they believe in, they follow whatever previous rabbis from other centuries have written about it. So listen to what they do. Look at what Daniel 9, starting in verse 25 says. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62. Well, if you're going to do what these guys do and do the time 7 years, have you ever asked yourself, why is it 7 weeks, which would be times 7 would be 49, comma and 60 and 2, okay, the way they do it, which is 434. Why do they separate it with a comma and? You ever ask yourself that question? Why not just call it 60, right, the 60 and 9? Why not just 60 and 9? Because if there's no reason for the separation and it's just going to be a full count of years, then why have the separation at all? You see, because together it equals 483 of the 490. So if you've got 483, how on earth are the Jews only saying 420? They say 420 because it fits so much more nicely into their count by saying the 70 of Jeremiah, the 70 comes off first, and then it's only 420. But that's not what it says. It says to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince is 49 and the 434. The 434 alone is already more than their 420. So it's already a twisted mess. Well, it goes further than that. So clearly it's already a twisted mess. But then you know what they go on to say? When you count like that, it either equals 68 or 69 BC. AD. So it's still depending on how you interpret their 120, which is already wrong. Do you understand why it's wrong? Do you understand that there's already this discrepancy? Remember what I was saying in the beginning? That their year counts are clearly wrong. Otherwise, we've got over 200 years still to go. Do you guys believe we have over 200 years to go? Do you think this revelation came about so we can wake the whole world up to the truth of Luke and the pre-trib first, so everybody will be ready pre-trib and there'll be no mid-trib great multitude, because there'll be 200 years of waking up people to the truth of Luke, then Mark, then Matthew? Of course not. Of course not. It's craziness. It's foolishness to believe that. Their year counts are wrong. And it's because they count from the time of when they believe Adam was created. But it's wrong and it's twisted. So we can already show it in the difference of it being over 200 years. But there's something else. You see, but it's not that simple, it says. The Talmud also gives another clue about the year of the destruction. Listen to this. The temple was destroyed in the year following a Shemitah year, a 7th-year agricultural cycle. To believe that, knowing their years are wrong, their literal interpretation of the 420 is already wrong. But they can hide these things because they don't teach from the scriptures. They teach from their different rabbis over the millenniums. You see, to believe it would mean they've got the year right all the way from Adam. But we know they don't, unless you want to believe we still have over 200 years left. You see? So if their year is wrong from their interpretation from Adam to even their interpretation, which we clearly see is not what Daniel says in Daniel 9, then what are the chances that the temple was destroyed following a Shemitah year? You see? It wasn't. But why do they say it was following a Shemitah year? Because they track it based on where they were in like 2008 or whatever year it is. You can just track back. So they say, see, if we follow the Shemitah years, we can understand the cycles and where the cycles should be. And when we do that, we find out that it actually gets you to 69, or depending how you count it, gets you to 70. You see? But it's still 69 or 70. And then they have all of these disagreements and back and forth as to how it could be counted. But guess what? If their year count from Adam is wrong, then saying it was the last year, the year following the Shemitah, is also wrong. Watch this. As I went and pulled this up and went and did some digging into this to find out the traditional rabbinic, which is what we were just talking about, the 420, compared to conventional history, it turns out that there's a fascinating, well-documented gap between traditional Jewish chronology, handles history, and how conventional modern historians have mapped it out. Okay, but they all agree it's that 70 time frame. But again, you see, it's not a disagreement that it happened. Obviously, it happened. It's that maybe a 68, but it'll either be 69 or 70 AD. You see, the discrepancy isn't that it was 65 or 60 AD, or that it was 75 or 80 AD. That's not the discrepancy. The discrepancy is how to count to get there. And they do it with Daniel. And when you take Daniel's count, neither of them lands. Neither of them lands. But I want to show you something. Do you know why the Jews keep it? You see, there's a clear gap between the historical timeline and what the Jews done. But what the Jews have done is they've gone off this Seder Olam. So it's like the church. The church, so many people in the church now know that Jesus was born in late spring, early summer, okay? In that summer time frame. But it's still, if you go to approach the church, they'll just say, oh, just leave it. A lot of people understand it now, but we still celebrate it over here. You're not going to change their mind. This is something that they've established and they've now stuck with. And so everybody just goes along with it and observes it at that time. Just like Passover and doing it at Easter. Are you supposed to be doing it at Easter? No, of course you're not. Most people understand you shouldn't be doing it at Easter, but that's where the church celebrates it, so we're just keeping it at that. Well, it's the same thing that happens here. There are all these missing years. There's a massive gap of at least 165 years between the conventional Judaism way and what the historians have discovered, because there's many more Persian empires that were in those missing years. So why do they do it? Well, here's the rabbinic view. They've taken the Jewish timeline based on the Seder Olam Rabbah, which is a 2nd century chronological work compiled by Rabbi Jose ben Halafta. So they stick with this rabbi's compiled work, which includes their belief of the time of Adam's creation and this count from that. So what they do is, because in his breakdown and his teaching that it says it was the year after a Sabbath year, then they say, we can take this and break down and continue our 7-year counts because that's where it was from. Now, let me ask you a question. Is that biblical? Is there anything in Scripture that tells them they've understood that count? No. He was a rabbi. He was a rabbi from the 2nd century. They've gone with his Seder Olam to stick with that. And here's why they did it. Why the math is kept that way. It says, despite modern historical and archaeological evidence establishing the longer timeline, traditional Jewish systems still explicitly use Seder Olam calculations, listen to this, for religious purposes such as determining the Shemitah or sabbatical 7-year cycle and calculating current Hebrew calendar years. You see what they do it for? It's not because once the evidence is shown to them, they're willing to make these adjustments and changes. They just say, no, we're sticking with it, because if we stick with it this way, we end up with our calendar that we can continue to track and say, these are our 7-year cycles. Are you ready for the truth? You want to see what the prophecy reveals? You want to see what the end of days shows us? Because we have the revelation of Luke in chapter 3 and 4 that the Jews don't look to. We know that this 30th year, when Jesus began to be about 30 years old, we know that it was in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar. And if in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, connected from the historical documents, and you've only got a certain time frame of years it could be, and those years have passed, we're in the final year, which is 29 AD. And by the way, as I said before, it's not that there were disputes as to when it was disputes as to, do you count from when he was co-reigning or when he was reigning by himself? If you count from when he was co-reigning, then you'd be back in here. If you count from when he did it by himself, you end up right here, and they're not in disagreement with it. Well, guess what? Do you know that 70 or 69 AD, they're not in disagreement that the temple, the stone temple, not the physical temple covered in skins, but the stone temple, which is the second type of temple, it wasn't that it was 65 or 75 or this big long stretch of years. It simply was it 69 or 70 AD based on how to count it. Okay? That's what the question is. Well, what if we can find the answer by understanding Luke chapter 3 and Luke chapter 4 when Jesus made the decree of the Jubilee? Do you understand that in this decree from the Jubilee, from the time frame established of when Jesus began to be 30 to when he has made this decree, do you understand that this decree time frame could have only been from right here to right here, but some say maybe there was one more year. But we've just seen enough evidence, haven't we? That it wouldn't be 1406 anymore. It wouldn't be 1948 anymore. You see, there's certain things that start to fall apart. What I'm showing you in this one is another confirmation that the revelation of prophecy confirms in the is from the time of Christ. That if this was the decree of the Jubilee, because Jesus began to be 30 and 29, and this was the decree of the Jubilee, which brings us to where? Which brings us to the final Jubilee right here at the end of the 14th year, the 49, Matthew 24, the days of Noah, which means the destruction of the physical temple of the end of days after it's been built, is going to happen what? In the 4th year of a cycle of 7. What did the Jews say it would happen? The Jews said that it will happen, that the destruction of the temple back then, the physical stone temple of the was destroyed in the year after, the year following a Shemitah cycle, the year following a 7, which means it would have been destroyed in a year 1. But prophecy has revealed to us, and we have understood it for years, that it's going to happen in a year 4. And if all of the evidence, I want you to pay attention, if all of the evidence of everything we have broken down, Joshua to Jesus, Passover, 7th year, 7th year, 49th year, days of Noah, 49th year, days of Noah, Matthew 24, 49th year, 1 year and 10 days. All of these counts from a count from Christ, from his birthday to about 15 months later, when he declared the Jubilee, equals the Jubilee being right here, which means 4 years earlier would have been the destruction of it after it had been built, which is proven everywhere in the was and in the is to be in the 11th year, in the 11th chapter, in the 11th year of the end of days, which is the 4th year of a cycle of 7, the final cycle of 7 of trumpet judgments. If it's proven and established already for years, and now proven and shown to you even more, that it is unequivocally going to be in the 4th year of trumpet judgments, if all of these other surrounding prophecies of the was and the is confirmed by prophecy lands exactly in their places, what do you think the chances of the physical temple made of stone in the is to come, that's destroyed in the 4th year of a 7-year cycle, wasn't in the is of Jesus's times destroyed in a year following a Sabbath, as the Jews say? But in fact, if prophecy is revealing understanding to the was and the is, as I was teaching you through all of these today, the whole reason for this buildup, proving all of these things out through Scripture, that if this is another one, as the destruction comes in the 4th year, what are the chances, right? Think about it. What are the chances that the destruction of the temple at the time after Christ in the is would have also happened in a year 4, in a cycle of 7? Because guess what? All of these are counts confirmed from Jesus's decree of the Jubilee in 30 AD. If that's true, and it also equals the destruction in the 4th year, then what is in the is to come, we should be able to point to in the is of what happened from Christ. Well, watch this. Watch this. If we go to Jesus's birth, as you now understand, it is 2 BC. There is no year 0 in a Gregorian calendar, which is this gray one right here. There is no 0 in a Gregorian calendar. So if you wanted to, you could say this is year 0, right? But it would be, it goes 2 BC, 1 BC, 1 AD, 2 AD, and so forth, okay? We know that Jesus was born in 2 BC. There he became 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Jesus began to be 30 in 29 AD, exactly as Luke says. Now, there's many that talk about this in the time of Jesus. Remember in Luke chapter 11, when Jesus said that he would be as Jonah was unto this generation, right? That he was going to what? That he was going to warn. Well, a lot of people will say that what Jesus did, how did Jesus fulfill this in the is? Well, we know in the is to come, Jesus is going to fulfill this when he comes as the white horse rider for 40 days. You see? So the is to come generation, the end of days generation, is going to be the fulfillment of this in days. But what the church have said, and what you're going to be able to see here, is this decree of when Jesus declared this being a picture of what? 40 years. Remember, there's always a year to day thing from the is to the was. Days as years, years as days. So the day decree of this hasn't happened yet, but will be in the is to come. But what about the year decree of it? You see, Jesus didn't decree this, didn't declare this at his birth, but it would have been at the time of what? Jesus showing up and Jesus' baptism. Jesus now shows up on the scene at the time that he's 30. So 40 years from the time of Jesus being 30, 40 years from 29 AD puts you at 69 AD. 70 years, remember this whole count is 70? There's always this count of 70 years. Well, when was Jesus born? Jesus was born in 2 BC. On a Gregorian calendar, you count 2 BC, you count 70 years. And in 69 AD, Jesus would have been 70. So you've got this 70 prophetic year count. You've got the 40-year count as 40 days as years that he was warning about this destruction coming. In the end of days, we know it's the 40 days, right? But guess what? This would have been when Rome destroyed Jerusalem. Jesus would have been 70 years old, would have turned 70, and it was 40 years after his baptism from 29 AD. You got your 70, you've got your 40, and it equals what? It can only be 69 or 70 AD, which is the debate. If it was 70 AD, guess what? From the decree of Christ, the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple would have happened in the 5th year of the cycle of sevens. Well, hold on a second. Does that make any sense? If everything else we've shown from the decree of Christ lands in its proper prophetic year that started to be revealed first in the revelation of the 14 years of the end of days, is the destruction happening here? No. We've shown where it was. It happens in the 4th year of trumpet judgments. In the cycle of sevens, it's going to happen in the 4th year. So if everything else prophetically revealed its time frame, what if we go to, where am I? What if we go to the time of Christ and count 70 years from his birth, count 40 years from his baptism, and from his decree of the Jubilee, count 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. We don't only get the confirming time of what it equals in the end of days, but that proves that 69 AD, look at that, is the 4th year in the cycle of sevens. The destruction of the temple in Jerusalem and the destruction of Jerusalem happened in the 4th year. Now, I ask you, brothers and sisters, what are the chances that the revelation of prophecy, which proved all of these things in their places from the was and from the is, based on the revelation of prophecy of the 14 years and then the Jubilee, that when we count these things back going by sevens, we don't only get the decree of Jesus' Jubilee in 30 AD, which equals the final Jubilee right here, but we get the 49th year or the 14th year as it was in the days of Noah from Matthew's discourse. Then we get the Matthew abomination of desolation when the pit is open and the beast returns and he goes into the physical stone temple that was rebuilt, equals the 4th year in the cycle of sevens, proven by the was of the temple that was built, proven by the chapters to years, and when we take this back to the time of Christ to see if it would also equal the 4th year as the destruction of the temple, we could determine whether it was 70 AD or 69 AD. And every single one of these counts proves it out right here, confirmed that it was 69 AD in the 4th year of the cycle that every single other one of these were counted from. The year Jesus made the decree of the Jubilee in Luke chapter 4. Did you see that, brothers and sisters? The revelation of the is to come brought us clarity to the creations, revealed to us the 42 stations at the fleeing in the wilderness to Mark's discourse, to the end of seals at the coming of the Lord as Messiah ben Joseph, as the Joshua Yeshua type, who will take them over into the promised land at the time which would be the equivalent of also a 7th year, and it would be at the time of Passover, to when they would then build a physical stone temple, the second type of temple, which would then, once being built and complete in the 11th year, would then see Satan cast down, the pit opened, and the beast in that 11th year of tribulation, in the 4th year of the cycle, have the temple be defiled and destroyed, Jerusalem being attacked and destroyed, and the temple being destroyed with the defilement of the beast, equal the same as it was in 69 AD, proving yet again that in fact the Jews' count of their long years in their believed timing of Adam, and that the church does the same, is because they have missed the importance of the value of the mystery of Luke chapter 3 to Luke chapter 4. Because if they understood that count, there would be no longer tracking what the Jews are tracking and claiming their year count is and what their Sabbath cycle count is. It is the revelation of the end of days, the above and 14 years, that is proven the revelation from the is and from the was all the way back to creation. And when we count these things from the decree of Jesus' Jubilee, we land on the precise years of the is to come. Brothers and sisters, I told you, if you weren't already excited, you just got more evidence. You just got more evidence. And all that this proves is that it's either within this month or at most within a year. That would mean the Jubilee was decreed one more year up, and it would push everything by 1 year. But I only say that as a grain of salt, because you guys already understand that there are other pieces that fall apart. But I'm saying this because yet again, there is only a gap of this period right here where these things could have happened. They don't debate, they don't dispute that it's in this range. They didn't dispute that it was in this range. But it's this decree of the Jubilee from Christ. After this decree right here, which they say could only be 2 months to a year and a half, we are in the window of 15 months. 2.5 years puts it out the window of the belief that has been understood throughout history. But is it possible? Maybe. But in all of this, I'm going to say this one last time today. Within all of this, that means we are in the window of this month to a maximum final window option of one more year. Regardless of either, all of that should put you in a place of incredible excitement and peace, regardless of what's coming. We said this in the last teaching. There's going to be some where it's going to be maybe treacherous times for some. But in all of it, remember what you have understood here. We're in this period that it all comes to an end. Every piece of it. You see, if we had to go one more year, this goes here. How would the decree be in 1948 anymore? Yet this was the year they came into the land. When you add this into the mix and the 70 years on this side, oh my goodness. Nothing actually beats the year we're in right now, this period right now, right here that we're in. It's crazy. It is so exciting. It is so, so exciting. And, you know, one last time in this as well, do you see how it's the revelation of the prophecy? It's the revelation of prophecy that has proven this out, that when we went back into history, it lines up in the same count of a 7 years and Passover. It's the revelation of history and the time of Christ that brought us to the final Jubilee in Matthew 24 with the days of Noah, that final year and 10 days to decree the Jubilee. It's the revelation of prophecy that showed us it was in the 11th year, which is the fourth year of the cycle of the final 7, that the temple is destroyed. And in all of these things, we have gone back into history and proven that their placement is the events of the years where these things happened. And it wasn't us that went in and told and did the counts to show that it was 69 or 70. It wasn't us that went back and did the count that it was 29 in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar. It wasn't us that went back and found that Jesus' birth was in 2 BC according to the sun, moon, and stars. It wasn't us who went back and calculated that it was 406 BC at the time of Passover when they went into the land. It was prophecy that went back after revealing it in prophecy, that we went back to the history records of people that have searched out and decreed and seen these things through the revelation of ancient writings and the historians that confirmed the timing of these things. It is prophecy that reveals the end of days and confirms the was and the is of the events of each of these things. The destruction of the physical stone temple was in the 4th year of the cycle, just as the is to come. For all that to be true, the decree had to be counted from the Jubilee of Jesus. Do you understand? I'll finish with this. What are the chances? What are the chances that all of this equals the same time years in every part of those things of history, even going back to the creation stories? Man, if you weren't excited before, you certainly should be now, because we've added another point into the story, proven by prophecy to events of the is. So exciting. Brothers and sisters, I know it's our Canada Day today for us fellow brothers and sisters here in Canada, but our next teaching won't happen till after July 4th, which is our American brothers and sisters American Day as our Canada Day. So I will say, as we come to an end, happy 4th of July for all of our American brothers and sisters, and prayerfully, in the next few weeks, we will either be standing prayerfully, having been accounted worthy to stand before the Son of Man, never having tasted of death, or be girded about, as we've all understood, ready and watching, prepared to receive him upon his return from the pre-trib Gentile wedding, to receive him and to serve him and to have that banquet meal with him. I love you. God bless you. God bless your families. We'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.